So we know that Microsoft has supposedly received the Statement of Objections from the EU right now. Not only that, but a whole lot is happening with the FTC case. Something happened with the gamers case, and all of this happened in just about the last 24 hours. I'm going to do my best to sort of collect how these are all intermingled because each case sort of seems to impact each other, starting with those EU Statement of Objections and when we might actually be able to read them. Let's dive into everything right now. So the most important update by far is that Microsoft is said to receive formal Statement of Objections from the EU on the Activision deal. Now, I left this as a footnote on yesterday's story, but basically Microsoft is like, we're willing to work with regulators to come to some sort of agreement. So it's not a big update. We didn't get to read anything yet, but we will soon, because what's going to happen is the CMA will post their findings. So Microsoft has a chance to make a statement about how they're working with the EU ahead of that. So I think eventually we get to read whatever those Statement of Objections were sooner rather than later, because we know it will come from the CMA eventually. Now, Foss Patents also reported on this, and Foss Patents said a few interesting things. Let's just go over them one at a time. MLEX reports that the European Commission has sent Microsoft a Statement of Objections over the acquisition of Activision Blizzard King. Now, I don't know what the subscription cost is for MLEX, but I usually go with Foss Patents because they report on MLEX, and I believe MLEX is quite expensive, but if it's not, let me know. It's like for corporations. So yeah. The week before the Statement of Objections, the European Commission's Executive Vice President, Margrethe Vestager, met with Sony's PlayStation chief, Jim Ryan. Microsoft subsequently accused Sony of having lied to people in Brussels, which may or may not include the EC, about the parity aspect of the 10-year Call of Duty license it is offering. I also made a video about that event that took place, and basically somebody at Microsoft on Twitter called Sony liars because Sony is saying things about Call of Duty still that have sort of moved forward because Microsoft has made those 10-year offers to everybody who is basically willing to take it. Not long after MLEX reported on the Statement of Objections, Microsoft said in a U.S. court filing that the deal will not consummate before May 1st at the earliest, but no reference is made to the SO. Now, he's drawing some correlations there to the gamers lawsuit, where Microsoft has said, hey, we know now that this deal will not close before May 1st, and we're actually going to request that we squash this gamer suit. So things are also developing there. And that's just I believe, a motion filing. So again, not worth its own video, but sort of interesting within the larger context of what is going on with all these cases. Some observers believe that the FTC may not give a damn about losing in court and may even consider it a sacrifice they just have to make in order to reset merger laws. I'm going to get to that source in just a second, but you know what, just let me dig here basically. So that was CNBC, I believe, where we first saw that this Microsoft Activision deal is an effort by the FTC to reset merger policy, says former commissioner. Now, he said something else very interesting during that case, which I'm going to get to in just a second, but half of you are not subscribed. So if you're digging what I'm selling right now, or talking about right now, I should say, bad phrasing, but hit that subscribe button, hit that bell, because I like covering this story for you and I like talking about it. No matter what happens, we're going to be here from start to finish and it's fun to discuss. So please consider hitting subscribe. Help me hit that goal of 100,000 subs and we can get there together. Now, the update to that was also that, okay, so lost my train of thought there for a second. So he thinks that this is going to reset merger policy, but there was something else he said. He said, look forward to the within merger from Meta and what happens there. Well, we actually got an update about what happened with that particular merger today, and I'm trying to find the source right now. The long and the short of it is Meta has won the court nod to buy Within Unlimited in a loss for the FTC. We're going to come back to that in a second, but it's a really important development because it's sort of gives us a hint as to what might happen in the Activision Blizzard case. Here's what Bloomberg said about that Meta case. The decision represents the first major loss for FTC Chair Lina Khan, who was appointed by President Joe Biden to reinvigorate antitrust enforcement as a key tenet of his administration's economic policy. Khan has taken a more aggressive approach to mergers than her predecessors and stepped up the agency's focus on technology giants in particular because of their potential to quickly dominate budding markets. The FTC's whole goal is to just tie up big companies, US or anywhere else, so that they can't get anything done. And that's been frustrating for a lot of people. Now, that analyst thinks that's an attempt to lose this Activision Blizzard case in an attempt to reset merger policy and kind of come up with new rules for how things work. Well, they just lost the Within case, so will they take that to trial? Probably not, because if they lose in their own court, I mean, it's not going to look good if they also lose in front of everybody else. And now here's what Bloomberg says about the Activision case, because that has impacts on the Activision case we're discussing now. At the December hearing, the FTC argued that Meta's acquisition of Within would help the Facebook parent develop a monopoly in the nascent virtual reality space. Remember all that nascent stuff we talked about in the videos, and they keep trying to say this is a similar case. Anyway, the FTC asserted that the deal could hurt potential competition that might emerge in the future. The exact same arguments the FTC is making for the Microsoft case, which is why people are tying these two cases together. Davila's apparent rejection of that argument could bode poorly for the FTC in its effort to block Microsoft from buying Activision, where similar contentions about the future of gaming and cloud are central to the complaint. This is very bad for the FTC. The FTC lost the Meta Within case. People aren't, just generally, people aren't super happy with the fact that the FTC is burning through cash on these lawsuits. And I will say this, the FTC is chasing some stuff that is really positive, but going after Meta for acquiring a VR thing, it almost seems like they don't have a full understanding of the deals. They kind of just want to mess with Facebook and Microsoft because they're big names and they need big wins right now. Now, I don't know that for sure. And I do think they are making positive strides in other aspects of things that the FTC should be worried about, like non-competes. I think getting rid of non-competes is a really noble effort by the FTC. I think those things screw people over more often than not. And if they were abolished, it would be much better for workers who want to take an offer somewhere else and they're not stuck in a contract or something like that, right? I'm not saying, just for clarity, that is not the case with me. I'm not saying that, but that is the case with some people out there, right? Some observers believe that the FTC may not give a damn about losing. So going back to that. And I think there was one more point in this original article. The EU now has the opportunity to become the first major jurisdiction to play hard but fair, to make a strong statement as it has with the SO, but work it out. So will they work it out? What is Microsoft going to bring to the table that makes them look good? So now jumping back over to that gamers lawsuit where they said, well, let's delay it to May. Here's what Foss Patton said about that. So Microsoft is now prepared to push back that earliest possible closing date to May 1st. Previously, we were guessing April 15th, which would make it possible to hold a preliminary injunction hearing later and have more time for briefing the motion. Currently, the hearing is scheduled for March 23rd, but is primarily asking Judge Jacqueline Scott Corley to dismiss the private lawsuit in its entirety. The motion to dismiss hearing is requested for March 9th. So there is a potential that that case just gets thrown out wholesale. Now, we talked a lot about ITIS and what is going on there. So what is going back to the FTC case? Don't forget, Microsoft is also sending out subpoenas to Sony and Nvidia. So what are they doing there? Well, long story short, those companies need to put their money where their mouth is and provide documents that pertain to the case and the statements that they made, which made the FTC sue Microsoft, right? Microsoft is trying to obtain documents and information from Sony that could be used as evidence during the administrative process. Activision Blizzard is doing the same with Nvidia. The process is called discovery. It's more common in the US than in Europe in any case. During the discovery phase, Microsoft and Activision Blizzard want to better understand the arguments presented by Sony and Nvidia to the FTC to learn about facts and info that could be useful for their case, and even obtain concessions and admissions about what Sony/Nvidia shared with the FTC. For example, discrediting some witnesses, expert reports, or data that could condition Sony and Nvidia early on. And also, it doesn't hurt that they get to hear from basically their competitors. Their competitors saying, we don't want this to happen. Okay, let us see your documentation. Let us see your proof that this would be bad for you and why. And then we can figure out concessions that would make sense, I have to imagine, would be the strategy. The problem with discovery is that it's expensive and can require a lot of time. If it includes electronic documents like chat messages, video calls, emails, etc., you are going to have to analyze millions of pieces of info. At the same time, a bad strategy during discovery can seriously affect the likelihood of your case because you missed relevant information or you gave away too much. Discovery is done under very specific rules, and Microsoft Activision Blizzard can ask for a lot. But those rules also allow Sony and Nvidia to defend themselves and limit the information or facts that can be analyzed and accessed. So what Microsoft Activision Blizzard and Sony and Nvidia are doing right now is negotiating/discussing the scope and schedule of the discovery process, the amount and type of info that can be analyzed, as well as when and how that info can be accessed. So it makes sense that Sony wants more time. They have been very active during the whole process, lots of evidence to check, and they probably want to limit what can be accessed so Microsoft has less options to win. Sony has to hand over a whole lot of info. They've made some pretty bold claims. Call of Duty is going to hurt us. Okay, let's see the documentation that proves that. Call of Duty is going to be exclusive. Let's see the documentation that actually recorded those conversations happening between Phil Spencer and I imagine Jim Ryan and what those entailed. What was inadequate to Sony. We could hear about all that in this case if the subpoena goes through and isn't turned down. They're trying to squash it right now, but chances are, I mean, I would be very surprised if they decided to squash that, because it would look like the FTC is purposely making the case harder for Microsoft to prove by backing Sony, who has been talking to the FTC, trying to get them to stop the deal, right? What happens if Microsoft, Sony, or Nvidia Activision Blizzard can't reach an agreement on the scope and schedule? Does the judge determine the scope, or is there some sort of default? Yes, if, for example, Sony fails to produce the info requested by Microsoft, the same request can be presented before the judge, who will decide if the request is valid and the extent of it. If Sony doesn't want to cooperate, it could be sanctioned, and certain allegations could be considered automatically true or not even disputed. That seems like it could go in Sony's favor or against them. So I'm not sure what they do there, but that will unfold. Let me just check through all my links here because I opened a whole bunch of stuff. One of the FTC lawyers appeared in court. There was a note about that. Here's a few important notes that I forgot to talk about. I just also pointed out that does the CMA publish their findings, or is it confidential like the EU? No, the CMA is public, as well as remedies that could be suggested. Expect at least 60 to 80 pages, although between 150 to 200 pages are more likely. In any case, they could go beyond 400 pages. The poll for today, here's what I want to know. Do you want to sit with me and do my prep with me for that video or those videos that I end up doing and read through all 400 pages? Or would you rather I just read the 400 pages and tell you the important bits? Because that's going to be a long weekend. I'll just tell you that right now. Sony's been subpoenaed and they're requesting more time. And you can actually see the official FTC documents here where both companies, this is the Nvidia one, this is the Sony one, where they're saying, hey, we want to delay this to February 15th before we can actually give you those documents because we need more time to get everything together. That's your big update for today about what is happening with the Activision Blizzard case. And to me, this is a big inflection point. There's a lot happening right now, and a lot of it is about the EU and the CMA, because depending on what happens with those cases, it's going to send signals to the FTC, to the judge of the FTC, and indicate whether or not this deal is going to go through easily or if it's going to be a long, drawn-out battle. A lot of overreactions to what has been, based on my understanding and people who are smarter than me's understanding, read on the matter. This is basic legal stuff. This is the process. Nothing crazy has happened. We always knew it would go to round 2 or phase 2 or the second part. The only one that's elevated it to a higher level than expected is the FTC thus far. So some interesting stuff developing. If you've watched this far and you're one and a half of the people that aren't subscribed, though, come on. Like, what are you doing with your life? You're going to miss out on one of the videos. The deal's going to go through and you're not going to know. So please consider hitting that subscribe button, hitting that bell. Also to the members, just a big thank you for letting me make these videos. I really, really appreciate it. Another long one today. I appreciate all of you. If you want to become a member, you don't like the ads on these videos, click that join button. They go away. I upload the video without ads. Check out the video from yesterday where we talked about stuff. You're not going to want to miss this one. I can't even remember. Well, the Halo stuff. The Halo stuff happened yesterday where we got an update from insiders about what 343 is doing and whatever's going to happen there. I'm going to get out of here and I'll see you for the next one. Bye for now, everybody.